All right, welcome back to another edition of American Soccer Break. We are coming fresh off a huge game last night. U.S. getting through 1-0 against El Salvador to make it to the semifinals of the CONCACAF Nations League. They had a previous game against Grenada. We'll be recapping it all. We got Roy coming back fresh from Japan. We got Rahi sporting his U.S. jersey. Let's get into it. We'll start with the game that was yesterday, El Salvador, U.S. Give me your thoughts.
It was a tale of two halves. The first half was terrible, but I want to focus more on the second half because I enjoyed the turnaround. I enjoyed what we did coming out of the break. The first half you're going to get. You're going to get that when you have players that are in and out of their starting lineups. We don't have a consistent system. We don't have a manager right now. It's an interim manager. So this kind of coming in and struggling to adapt initially, I'm okay. It's a little excusable. But what makes it excusable is the second half performance, which was dominant, really was dominant. And in the past, we've played this El Salvador team. They're very good tactically. Hugo Perez is a very good coach. We always kind of play this 1-0 tight game. And this was the same score, but it was much more dominant in the second half. They didn't get out of their half in the second half. We were completely dominant. We looked like we had that swag and that flair that we had at times in the World Cup. I really enjoyed the second half, and we'll talk about players, I'm sure, that stood out, and there were a couple that stood out. But honestly, for me, it was whatever was said at halftime, and maybe it was the captain, maybe it was Pulisic, maybe it was the players who said, look, we got to get better. And whatever it was, I was impressed with the second half because it was one of the more dominant displays we've had against El Salvador in a long time.
All right, that's sweet of you, Rocky. I think it's nice of you to focus on the positive like you always do. I am not happy about this game. I think the U.S. was absolutely terrible. You said terrible. Props to you. I think they were atrocious in that first half, considering the fact that we're at home, considering the fact that we have players playing across Europe. These are highly touted players. These are players who are on the international stage, either playing really well, starting for their teams in Europe. Gio Reyna, who's talked about like the golden child, Pulisic, who's talked about like the golden child, and then they come together and play that way at home against El Salvador, who on the back line alone has a USL player, has a couple of MLS bench players. They have USL and MLS bench players throughout their lineup. This isn't a good team. We shouldn't play this way against teams who are not good teams. If we're playing this way against Serbia or, some mid-range European teams, fine. Okay. It's a decent opponent, but this is El Salvador. And we're putting a Borussia Dortmund guy, a Chelsea guy against a guy that plays for El Paso Locomotive. Are you freaking kidding me? That is embarrassing. And they held them. They held their line. They defended well. We weren't dominating at all in that first half. We could have lost this game. Gio Reyna was invisible. The guy that complained, his parents complained endlessly that he didn't get many minutes at the World Cup, and then he comes and does this. Pulisic was a disaster. His first touch was terrible. Daryl Dike, so disappointed to see the way he played. I'm really excited about that guy, but I don't know if he has the soccer smarts to get it done with this team. But yeah, I thought it was a terrible first half. And yes, the second half was a lot better, but you can't start a game in this way with the players you have against the opponent you're going up against. Come on.
I'm going to chime in here, actually. I agree with you, Roy, and I'll tell you why. I did think the second half was good, but here's my problem, and I want to kind of allude to the Grenada game as well. Because what this team, I've seen some of the same issues is, yes, fine, second half, fantastic, whatever, but we still only scored one goal. Mm-hmm. And our two problems are that we can't score goals and that, that's like the main thing, frankly, they can't score goals. And the second thing is they get very cute with the ball, I found. Like in the first half, there was just a lot of dribbling. Zendejas was dribbling way too much. So I don't know. I mean, didn't you see that, Rahi? Like some of the same issues we've seen throughout this whole thing?
Well, we scored 7 goals against Grenada. I mean, so goals, I don't think it's fair to say, look at the El Salvador game and say we didn't score. I think we created more than we've created many games against them. The qualifier that Roy, you and I went to in Columbus, that was a 1-0 game where Anthony Robinson scored. Was very lucky. Mm-hmm. This, we created a lot of chances. I mean, yes, there were some of the same problems, but some of it was tactical. You saw in the first half that our defenders dropped a little too far back. They were winning all those first headers. And then Miles Robinson and Tim Ream stepped up. And Miles Robinson had a great game. And once they stepped up, nullified what was a smart tactical plan from El Salvador. And yes, Zendejas dribbled too much. But Zendejas has played, 2 games with the national team? I mean, this lack of cohesion is natural. You talked about Borussia Dortmund, Chelsea. These are both players who play on the bench. When's the last time Gio Reyna played for his club? Christian Pulisic just came back for Chelsea. So lack of cohesion is what we saw. And sure, yeah, that's what happened. I mean, look, I think this is international soccer, right? France just barely survived against Ireland. Croatia
but look,
tied Wales. This happens, right?
Again, I don't want to belabor this, but I think it's appropriate. The one thing I will say, and even hearing the commentators and stuff on the game, I think this team gets too much leeway. We talked about how the women, every time the women are out there, they're expected to dominate and win. Right now, we're playing El Salvador. We should stop being. I know it's the game at hand, but when you're looking at these games, you have to think about, okay, we're playing El Salvador. How would we do against these top teams? I don't mean in that particular moment. I'm saying thematically as a whole. The themes have not changed. It's the same thing. You hear the commentators be like, fantastic pass by McKennie to Pepe, fantastic finish by Pepe. What a standout game. What a fantastic game. And then afterward, they have Matt Turner with his kid and everything's happy and go lucky and all that kind of stuff.
Ted Lasso thing ever.
Yeah, exactly. Like, that's fine. That's fine. I get all that. But at some point, just how England does the opposite, where they're very hard on their team. We do exactly the opposite.
We need some of that.
That's okay. That's okay to do if in big games against the Netherlands and stuff we were winning. In games like this, it's like you look at a second half and you're like, what a fantastic second half. But what happened about the first half?
Okay, so what do you want to go back to, 6-7 years ago where we're basically winning this game 3-0, 2 corner kick goals, Graham Zusi has one off a header, and then Kyle Beckerman with another rebound goal that deflects off 3 people and goes in. I mean, my point is that this is a better performance than we've ever seen. And so, yes, you're right.
For 40 minutes. For
45 minutes, it was. And this El Salvador team has given us problems in the past. I don't disagree. They need to be held to a high standard. But this is not the game to do it. You're not going to extrapolate performance against El Salvador and see how that could then become against a team like Colombia, Paraguay, these sort of mid-tier South American teams. You're not going to learn anything.
Yeah, that's a fair point. I mean, I think moving on now to like specifically the players. So which players stood out for you?
Yeah, for me, it's 2 players. And I know we talked last week and I said it doesn't matter who scores the goals. But unless you come in with your first touch and make a wonderful run, and that finish from Ricardo Pepi was
beautiful.
That was a class finish. And you know what I love? I love the little celebration. He had the little he just has swagger, which is something I've always loved about him as a player. And I think he's wants to prove himself with Flo in the mix in Orlando, lurking around the U.S. camp. So I thought he was fantastic. So I really think his movement was excellent, and I'm really encouraged about where he can go. And I think people have talked about this, but that's the one big mistake that Berhalter made is not taking him to the World Cup. So I think he was very good. And the other guy I want to talk about is Miles Robinson.
Fantastic.
Who, against a poor opponent, wasn't under pressure. But look, he was winning a lot of headers in the second half, stepped up, fantastic on the ball. He had one where the guy was at least 5 feet offside, and then he still wins the ball.
Still got that.
I mean, he's so good in one-on-one situations. It's very rare to see that. It's sad because he really could have been a huge player in the World Cup.
I love Miles Robinson. I've loved him for the past couple of years. I love that he's representing MLS in a very positive way. Yeah. It's a world of difference from how Jordan Morris did at the World Cup, from how Ferreira did at the World Cup. It would have been nice to have someone that just killed it for the national team in MLS. And that's this guy. Miles is killer. He's an amazing defender, amazing one-on-one. He's so quick. So yeah, that's my main standout guy. I'm not really going to highlight anyone from the first game. From the second game, I mean, it's got to be Pepe, right? And the reason I say Pepe is because now, with Balogun potentially joining the U.S., fingers crossed, that's going to be a massive difference maker. I think Pepe's going to have something to say for that starting number 9 spot. I don't know if it's going to be handed to Balogun so easily because he's killing it right now. He's looking really good for the U.S.
I mean, there's no question. If Balogun does choose
We'll
the
see.
U.S., he's starting day one. There's no question.
Maybe day 1,
Well-
but let's see day 2, man. Let's see day 2.
What about any of the fringe? And what about any of the fringe players? Any of the fringe players from the Grenada game or this game? Rahi, any of those guys?
Honestly, I don't think anyone took their opportunity. So I think all the defenders against Grenada looked really not very good. Mark McKenzie was okay, a little shaky. Both Reynolds, Trusty, no one stood out. A lot of mistakes, I thought. Taylor Booth, a guy I was excited about, looked too overeager, and that's fine. That happens. I think he wasn't clean on the ball at all. I really didn't see anyone else. The other guy I was hoping would stand out a bit was Endejas, but he has the skills certainly, and he was good against Grenada. Today he just dribbled too much, and he was cutting inside every time, not positionally disciplined, and that was the problem. So I think honestly, unless I'm missing someone, nobody stood out. No one took their chance. DK's one that you brought up, Roy, and
what a disappointment.
He's not quite there. He's not quite there.
Yeah.
But for me, it's Zendejas I'm still excited about, even though he got too excited in that second game. I think he took the way he played in the first game was so good, so exciting. And I think he had that mentality coming into the second one, which he needed to shift that. But Miles Robinson is a fringe guy. And so is Pepe. Pepe is fringe.
Yeah,
he didn't make the World Cup. So, aside from them, Booth didn't do much. None of the other guys you mentioned, Reynolds, Trusty, Scally, I don't know if anyone really staked their claim there. So, I'm going with the same dudes.
I think we can all agree there was a lot of strong points coming out of the game, and there's obviously some room for improvement. So I guess finishing it off, what's next? What's next for the U.S. men's national team now? We have a little bit of a break. They're not going to come back together as a whole unit in terms of all the players until the summer. It's a big summer though. So what's next between then and now?
I'll start on that one. There's not much we could do tactically without a coach. So my two things are lock down Balogun. Let's end this drama. Lock him down. Get a world-class striker on our team. This is our what's the Canadian forward's name? This is our killer.
Jonathan David.
Jonathan David. This is our Jonathan David. Probably even better. So the U.S. with a killer striker who scores tons of goals, that's going to change this team. So lock him down ASAP. He's in Orlando. He wants to play for us. Just make it happen. That's my number one thing. And let's get a coach on board. Jeez Louise, there's not too many combos we could have without a coach.
Yeah, we got to hire a sporting director. Certainly a manager's key. Again, I harken back. It's really on the players at this point. It's like, can these guys lock down starting spots? Can Christian Pulisic find a way to get into the Chelsea team? Can some of these guys start to be more consistent in their performances? Weston McKennie was, again, in this game, one half bad, one half good. He's with the Leeds team. He looks good at times, looks not so good at times. I mean, so it's hard to say what's next for the team because there is no collective plan until we have a manager. So it's really what's next for the players. And the thing I'm really happy about, and regardless of maybe not a great performance against El Salvador, is I think Christian Pulisic is becoming a captain. I feel that he has some responsibility. I feel that he's serious in a way that I think some of the other younger players aren't, and that's okay. But I think I get the sense that he's starting to become professional, and the team needs to be more professional. To your point, we need to hold him to a higher standard. And that only happens if players develop and mature. And honestly, I'm just gonna go back to the leagues, and watch how these players develop, because that's all we can do in the meantime until we get a coach. We're kind of like twiddling our thumbs, honestly.
Yeah, it's fun to do, man. It's fun following these players.
Yeah,
they're all young guys.
It is fun. Yeah.
Well, cool. I think I think that was overall we got the result we needed, and we'll see you guys during the summer for some big soccer. I won't ask you guys what you're watching this week because we'll be back on in a few days and we can figure it out then. But overall, just to recap it all, USA last night beats El Salvador, makes it through to the CONCACAF Nations League semifinals. We'll see you guys then. Yeah, see you guys then. And go USA as always.
Go USA. Performance for the ages.